For 2,000 years, the Catholic Church has stood as one of the most powerful institutions in human history, a symbol of faith, of salvation, of divine authority on earth. But behind the grandeur of its cathedrals, behind the robes, relics, and rituals, lies another story, one written in fear, secrecy, and blood. For every prayer whispered in devotion, there were screams, muffled by confessionals and stone walls. For every act of mercy, there were acts of cruelty, committed not by enemies of the Church, but by its own hands. This isn't an attack on belief. It's an examination of power, how it corrupts, how it hides, and how it endures. They sought the Holy Sepulchre, not for God, but for glory. They marched beneath the cross, swords raised high, believing they were chosen to cleanse the world in His name. But in their wake, faith became fire, and salvation turned to blood. The fire was meant to cleanse the world. Instead, it lit the path for darkness. Faith and fear are twins. Feed one and the other will follow. For every prayer whispered in devotion, there were screams, muffled by confessionals and stone walls. The ocean carried prayers and gunpowder in the same hold. Sailors crossed it, clutching crucifixes beside compasses, dreaming of salvation, fortune, and forgiveness, all measured in miles. When the horizon split and land rose from mist, they saw not a new world, but Eden rediscovered, ready to be named again. They called it conversion. The land called it conquest. Faith was a banner in one hand and a blindfold in the other. I saw with my own eyes so many cruelties as to make heaven. He pleaded with kings and popes to see indigenous peoples as souls, not subjects. His words echoed but did not halt the march. In every age there are voices that stand against the choir. They are heard only after the music stops. The water that washed away sin also hid the sound of chains. Reform was born in anguish, and yet even in flame, some began to see that faith without mercy is only fear in disguise. It was the silence of men who used it as armor that made it terrible. History is a book of contradictions. Its holiest pages are often stained. The oceans that carried crosses and cannons began to carry doubt. Soon enlightenment would rise, and the age of fear would face its own trial. The world awoke. Candles that had burned for centuries guttered in the sudden wind of reason. The age of faith gave way to the age of question. Faith built on fear cannot survive the question. Every faith that endures must one day confess to its own shadow. Repentance is not weakness. It is the courage to admit that God does not need a sword. This was the lesson hidden all along, that the light men sought in heaven was always waiting in their own hearts. Faith was meant to be a light, a beacon in the darkness. But somewhere along the way, that light grew too bright, and in its brilliance it burned everything it touched. They called it devotion, they called it purity. But behind every sermon, behind every prayer whispered into the void, there was something else. Control, power, fear, and fire has always been the easiest way to erase a sin, or hide one. For centuries, faith has given people reason to live, and others reason to die. It comforted the broken, but it also justified the breaking. And when belief becomes blind, when worship turns to weapon, it no longer saves, it scorches. It remembers the flames, but it forgets the hands that struck the match. Those who watched from the shadows, calling the fire holy, as the innocent turned to smoke. Maybe faith was never meant to be fire. Maybe it was meant to be water, something that cleanses, heals, renews. But as long as man believes he speaks for God, the fire will never die. It will burn through generations, changing names, changing churches, but always consuming the same thing, the truth. History is a confession written in blood and hope. And though its pages burn, the ink remains. For in every heart that learns compassion, a new gospel is written. One not of fear, but of grace.